Hello class, this is Chantal Pham. I'm doing a presentation for the class Intro to Integrations, and my topic is Atheism/Agnosticism. So during this presentation, I'll be going over some key terms, the demographics of atheism, some of the history, how atheist beliefs influence their worldview, biblical approaches, and I'll end with psychosocial functioning and intervention concepts for therapists. So, some key terms include atheism is the disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. It is the absence of belief in the existence of deities. The root for atheism is Greek atheos, meaning without gods. Theism is the belief that one deity exists. There's monotheism and polytheism. Monotheism is the belief that one deity exists. Polytheism is the belief that multiple deities exist. Then there's also agnosticism, is the view that the existence of God, of the divine, or the supernatural is unknown or unknowable. So the key term is unknowable for an agnostic. A gnostic is someone who believes that they know for sure. In more broad terms, the agnostic is a person who is unwilling to commit to an opinion about something or is not committed to believing in either the existence or non-existence of God or a god. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should say you are unwilling to commit to an opinion about something, but that is the range of the definition of an agnostic. Also, the category or term nones, N-O-N-E-S, is used to refer to those who choose not to affiliate themselves with any religion. Something else to note is that atheists have no practices associated with them. And neither do agnostics have no practices associated with them as far as the agnostic atheist. So before we dive into the demographics, let's talk about the agnostic atheist versus the Gnostic atheist. So I have a chart on the handout that shows 4 different categories. There's the agnostic atheist, Gnostic atheist, agnostic theist, and Gnostic theist. I think this chart shows paints a nice picture of what the differences are between these different terms. So the agnostic atheist is someone who says, I lack belief in a God, but I'm not 100% sure I can know for sure. A Gnostic atheist is, I lack belief in a God, and I'm 100% sure there is no God. The agnostic theist believes that there is a God, but doesn't claim to know for sure. And the Gnostic theist is the person who believes there is a God and knows 100% for sure. So we're going to be talking about the agnostic atheist during this presentation, and that's the person who says, I don't believe in God, but I'm not 100% sure. And the reason why we're talking about the agnostic atheist instead of the Gnostic atheist is that the agnostic atheist is more prevalent as far as statistically in the atheist population. The atheists who say, I don't know for sure. Those are the more prevalent of the two populations. So let's keep in mind that accurate demographics of atheism are really difficult to obtain since concepts of atheism varies across different cultures and people shift their beliefs between studies, and many people just choose not to disclose their religion or lack thereof. But according to a Pew Research study in 2014, the median age of atheists is 34, and they're also average-wise white males. Now, breaking down from this statistic, 97% say they seldom or never pray, and roughly 2/3 say they seldom or never discuss their views on religion with religious people. Something to keep in mind about as far as becoming a future therapist. Something else is, as far as the demographic, something else to consider is that some unaffiliated Americans are referred to as nones. 21% of the American population does not identify with any religion, according to the General Social Survey from 2014. And according to a writer named David Robertson, 23% of the US say they have no religion, and 50% of the UK, United Kingdom, believe or self-designate themselves as no religion. So you can read a little bit more about the statistics and whatnot on the handout, but let's go a little bit into the history. So philosophical atheists thought began to appear in Europe and Asia in the 6th or 5th century BCE. Atheistic schools are found in early Indian thought and have existed from the times of the historical Vedic religion. So, in the East, a contemplative life not centered on the idea of deities rose with the founding of Jainism, Buddhism, and various sects of Hinduism in India, and Taoism in China. Western atheism has its roots in pre-Socratic Greek philosophy. Pre-Socratics, such as Democritus, attempted to explain the world in a purely materialistic way and interpreted religion as a human reaction to natural phenomena, but did not explicitly deny the God's existence. All right, so because atheists don't have any practices or specific beliefs besides the fundamental commonality of I don't believe in a God or gods, I decided to look at what are some common traits of atheists. What would they say that they agree other atheists share with them? So I broke it down to 8 different characteristics. So self-proclaimed atheist would say, the majority would say they're logical, they're skeptical, they practice differentiating between right and wrong, they're courteous and polite, they are practical, they're fearless in the sense of they don't believe that they go, or they believe they don't go anywhere after they die. There's no heaven and hell. So what is there to fear, per se? It's just death. It's just a period at the end of a sentence, and that's it. Hardworking is another characteristic, and being open-minded. Something that I gathered from my coworkers because I talked to 2 of them who are self-proclaimed atheist, and one of them is a Gnostic atheist. Anyways, he said that we don't believe in mysticism or miracles. I have some quotes on the handout that I thought were kind of funny as far as their beliefs as atheists as well. All right, some biblical approaches. So I wrote this part of the handout to be helpful for Christian therapists in the sense of maybe how to approach different characteristics of atheist. So first, atheists aren't saved. This may seem obvious, but sometimes we spend more time pointing them to their sin instead of pointing them to their Savior. John 14:6, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So I think it's interesting that we have a reputation as Christians of pointing to sin and saying, you'll go to hell if you blah, 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 instead of just pointing out who Jesus is and having that person, the atheist, reflect on that. Another thing is, and this is all from the author, an author from Desiring God, David Robertson. But anyways, another kind of thing we can think about is we minimize a hurt in the atheist's life that they expected God to fix. So most atheists have experienced a time in their lives when they believed that God didn't come through for them. Maybe a family member got sick or wasn't healed. Maybe a relationship fell apart despite their prayers. Or maybe a church treated them badly. So we must not minimize their pain or dismiss it. Instead, we need to take the time to listen to them about it. Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Another thing to think about is be prepared to discuss the tithe and its true purpose. Some people are like, why do I have to give my money to the church? And see the church as maybe money hungry or just distrustful. And this is not just atheists. This could also be Christians as well, right? So we must remember that we tithe not because God needs our money, but because he cares about where our heart is in relation to this money. And that was a quote by David Robertson. Another thing to think about is we must be in relationship with atheists until they have a question. We should pray for God to give us opportunities instead of making them. ourselves. So that's another point by David Robertson. And lastly, Christians tend to invite atheists to church instead of inviting them to our house. And we have to remember that our hospitality and how we reflect Jesus through our lives is the biggest testament that we can offer, the biggest gift we can offer to someone who is a non-believer. In some senses, right? So let's talk about intervention concepts as far as psychosocial functioning of an atheist. So what comes to mind after I gathered some of this data is that atheists are very practical, very here and now focused, and less focused on existentialism. So some forms of therapy that are associated with here and now and evidence-based practices are behavioral therapy and cognitive therapy, and also solution-focused therapy. I also throw in narrative therapy because I think meaning making and also having a larger perspective on one's life in relation to other people's stories might be something that connects an atheist with us as Christians and with the fabric of humanity, and that might give some different perspective that maybe maybe the Holy Spirit or God would use. So some interventions and applications map the meaning of the problem-saturated story and make meaning of experiences. And this is narrative therapy, because some clients may fail to find meaning in their lives, and also to practice externalizing the problem and rewrite future stories, plan for a less problematic future. So these interventions are very solution-focused, even though it's not solution-focused therapy. And change occurs when hope and meaning is added to a client's life, focus on the self-proclaimed traits of being an atheist, logical and practical. And then there's solution-focused therapy, and I thought of this because of the subjective nature of life's meaning for atheists. They focus on solution-focused therapy would help the client create their goals and identify their resources and their strengths instead of focusing on external resources and strengths. Scaling questions, miracle questions are all client or person-centered. And this is good for diversity issues, short and long-term goals. Again, it's very solution-oriented, very practical. And next is behavioral therapy. So it's interesting that this came up in my mind because 12-step groups as far as AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, are associated with a higher power, but that doesn't necessarily mean atheism, right? Or the lack thereof, or not atheism. But I thought the token economy, assertiveness training, relaxation training, activity logs, homework, mood and thought logs, those are all very practical things for a person who says they're atheist to use, because they're external modifications of the environment which leads to change, and it's symptom focused. So there's practical applications for atheists. Lastly, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, and that is the intervention would be identifying automatic negative thoughts with the client, any cognitive distortions, and also keeping track of how thought affects actions. So change happens when problematic thinking is adjusted to produce healthy, effective behavior, practical and concrete. So the atheist could see practical, real-time kind of results. And again, all of these are evidence-based practices, which I believe an atheist would endorse, since some of the characteristics, again, are being logical, being skeptical, being practical, etc. So thank you for watching my presentation on atheism/agnosticism, and I hope you have a great day. Okay, bye.